Okay, it is 5 o'clock, and we will call the meeting to order, the special board meeting of the trustees. We have quorum present. All the trustees are here. That's easy to determine. And the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda items.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have public comment for an agenda item. Do we have anyone signed up for a public comment? Ms. Lamont is checking.
Yep.
No one signed up? It doesn't look like we have. Would you like to provide public comment on the agenda item? I'm giving you that because we didn't have anybody signed up and you came, and we'll give you 3 minutes if you would like to provide public comment on the agenda item, which is the bond resolution.
Well,
And if so, we need to come up here, state your name. Oh yeah, you gotta go through the formalities.
okay. Boy. Just kidding. That's okay. I was in education for 35 years. No?
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Kaylin Higgins, and I am a community member in Nampa. And I am here because I am in support of a bond issue for the Nampa High School District, and I support a full package. And I just think that we need to be getting what we really need for our kids. And I really believe that the learning environment is what is really important, and that needs to be offered to all of the children in the district. Not just this district, this high school or that high school or whatever, this elementary. It needs to be whatever our needs are. Let's assess them. And I know that you have done a lot of that already, but I want you to know that I am in support of it, and I will do all I can to help see that the community gets information and we educate the community and try to eliminate as much gossip as possible. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylin.
So, I don't typically do this, but I do. It looks like we have one other member from the public come in, so I just want to give you an opportunity. If you want to have public comment, you're more than welcome. Take the 3 minutes. If not, that's completely up to you.
I sent an email
Well,
with,
okay. If you send an email, that's fine too. We just want to give that opportunity. All right.
thank you, I appreciate it.
So that concludes our portion of the public comment agenda. So we will go to agenda number 4, or item number 4, action items, which is the bond resolution.
Chairman, trustees, tonight before you is a possible bond resolution that's brought forth. We have folks from Holly Trustees here, our partners, to kind of walk us through that. I think there might be some edits that might need to be made to that, and so I'm going to have them come and kind of talk through and present a little bit of that information. So Chelsea and Brandon are going to come up.
A little taller here. Hi, I am Chelsea Porter from College Troxel, and I don't know if a red line was distributed to you guys today, but there were a couple edits made. So I have hard copies that I could give you guys.
Thank
you.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman and trustees, like I said, Chelsea Porter from Holly Troxel, and we serve as bond counsel to the district. I have worked with the district for 8 years now, but I haven't been out here in front of all of you guys yet, so it's nice to meet you. We're always excited when districts are looking at passing a new bond, but we know it's a big decision, and so the resolution in front of you would authorize a bond election It would, give you the authority to place a question on the ballot and move forward. If the ballot were to pass, there would be steps after that we would go through before issuing the bonds. So the resolution simply sets forth that the district finds it's in the best interest of the district to call a bond election. And it sets forth, I think the kind of primary, most important piece of this is it sets forth the ballot language. And so that is in section 5 on the second page. I'll go through it in a little more detail, but the statutory requirement for the question when you describe the purpose for which the bonds will be used, the statutory mandate, the minimum that you can state is that it'll be used for school facilities and school purposes. Most districts like to give a little bit more information than that because patrons like to know what the money is going towards and not simply, a blank check to do whatever they want with. I think West Data is the only district that I know of in the state that does kind of that blanket statement, and then they work with their patrons kind of in their outreach to describe the projects themselves. So that first portion of the ballot is the district's description of the projects that it would use the proceeds for. It currently lists a replacement of Nampa High School and Centennial Elementary, the construction of a new career and technical center, renovations and upgrades to athletic facilities, including tracks, tennis courts, stadiums, and gymnasiums, renovations at Columbia High School, Skyview High School, West Middle School, and Central Elementary, and safety and security projects throughout the district, including in each case related site work supporting infrastructure, furnishing, and equipment. And we like to add kind of that final piece to make sure that if there's extra money, you can do maybe additional technology improvements if, in the event the projects came in under cost, which would be great news. You aren't stuck because this is your contract with the bondholders. And so you are limiting yourself to spend bond proceeds on what's listed in this question. So if you did come in under or construction costs went way down and you had an extra $1 million that you couldn't spend on these projects, you would either have to not use that money, forego that $1 million, or you would have to go back to the bondholders and ask for permission to spend it on something else. So we like to advise districts to, be specific with what they're asking for so that patrons know, but also give yourself a little bit of flexibility in the event that there are leftover proceeds. So I think that fifth paren for security projects, equipment furnishings is sufficient. It also states that the term of the bonds would be 25 years from the date of issuance. And then these next two paragraphs are statutorily required disclosures. The first paragraph is verbatim what is required. It states the anticipated interest rate of the bonds, and then it sets forth the amount to be repaid, consisting of the principal amount, interest based on that because we're still a little bit away from when the ballot needs to be submitted to the county, if for some reason the rates go down from this estimated 4.77%, if the rates do go down prior to the deadline for submission, then you guys are delegating authority to the superintendent, director of operations, and director of finance collectively to work with Piper Sandler, Eric here, to get the updated disclosure numbers based on that lower interest rate. However, if rates were to go higher than that 4.77%, you would have to call a special meeting to authorize a new resolution. So we just, if it's better, we're allowing the district the ability to update that prior to submission. However, if the disclosure is, a greater impact upon patrons, we think that the board should make that decision.
That makes sense.
Off to you. You can simply make a resolution to approve, or make a motion to approve the bond election resolution as presented to you. So I just spoke a lot at you. Happy to answer any questions if I can.
Questions? Trustee Thurston?
To clarify, if the rate goes up, you're saying that you would bring it back to whether it goes on the ballot? Or
Yes.
Because of course it would increase taxes.
So yes.
So how does
go
that
ahead.
work?
Yeah, so yes, that is what we're saying. So if you approve the resolution as is, because we're giving you the ability to update that in the event that it goes lower, we also think that that comes with it a little bit of responsibility to update it if it goes higher. There is some cushion in there right now because it is just an estimate. As much as we would like to know what rates are, we don't. So this is a reasonable estimate. I don't want to speak for Eric, but he's usually conservative in making that estimate, and there's some wiggle room. So if it does go up, say before the January 23rd deadline that this needs to be submitted to the county, we would probably check a couple of weeks before, and if it is at 4.8%, you would need to call a special meeting. We would revise the resolution that's in front of you to update those numbers, and that would change the disclosure numbers. Again, I'm not the math person, but I would think by no more than $1 or $2, and we would simply update that, and you would make a motion to approve it with that new rate, and then you would send it to the county.
Any other questions?
I have one. And Chelsea, thank you. As you talked about, in that section 5 and the part that gives us if the costs come in lower and there's money, and you just used an example, like if there's $1 million that isn't used on the things stated in here, is it also possible for the district to say, we're not going to use that, we're going to give that back to our taxpayers? Or how does that, I mean, I know that you specified that, that they could use it for things that the bond is allowable to be used for. But
yeah, so you're not really going to hand it back to the patrons. Right. It's a little hard to do, but you could use it to pay your debt service early, which would essentially amount to levying a lesser tax from your patrons, because you would have money that would pay your debt service, if that makes sense.
And so would that be I'm just thinking for the average, all of us that would be paying a tax, like, does that then, do we see that rather immediately, or?
I'm turning to Eric.
I think it takes a vote, if I remember.
Well, so your vote, the approval of, if the voters approved to authorize the district to issue bonds, if they approve this ballot, that essentially means that they are agreeing to have a levy against their property for 25 years or however long it takes to repay the bonds. Okay. And in the amount sufficient to repay the bonds, because again, they're agreeing to levy the principal and the interest. And because we don't know how much the interest is until they're sold, we can't tell that to the patrons at that time. So if they agreed to $1 million and $500,000 was interest, and you had $500,000 left over, you're essentially levying them $500,000 less than you would otherwise be levying.
Okay.
And I don't know how quickly that would happen. I would say it depends on how much you've certified already.
It would be effectively a decision would be the board's decision at the time of what to do with those leftover monies, and also have some choice on how you apply it, whether it's right away or to pay off the longest bond first.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, one more
Absolutely.
just
Go ahead.
follow up to that. If I didn't lose it. And is that maybe like why the updated version here on the dollar amount, is that maybe like a possible reason why it's $1 more, is something similar to that situation that we're currently in on section 5?
I don't know the reason for the update. I think it's because Eric probably got new numbers from the county based on the assessed value of the property, and that changed it. But
Sorry, I know it's $1, but I know people are gonna ask, so I wanna be able to answer it.
So let me make sure I understand the question correctly before I answer it. Are you asking why we would have the ability to come back and change the interest cost disclosures? No.
No, so I'm just saying with the updated version, how it went from currently paying 91,
Oh,
or that it would
Oh,
be $92. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
something that, because
Yeah, I
the
got it.
previous 59, went
Right.
to 60?
so I'm going to throw the lawyers under the bus here. So it's because the lawyers did the math on 59.
This is my
See?
lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't even try to.
Well, you didn't hesitate.
I get it. I get it. That's all you have to say.
Pause or something.
Okay.
No, he throws us under regularly and free.
I don't even know what to take notes of. If the lawyers does stuff, that would be the answer.
I want to know how it was. Honestly, your bonds are calculated. I'm going to get in the weeds. Your old bond calculated tax rate on your existing bonds does not include the urban renewal value
Okay.
as part of your market value. But there's been a law change since all those old bonds were authorized, and now you get to levy against the district's tax base plus the urban renewal.
Okay.
So the urban renewal doesn't get any money from your bonds anymore, or in the
Right.
future. It used to.
Okay.
And that's why, so the 59 was assuming you had the urban renewals. Honest mistake. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Probably a question for you, Chelsea. That same section,
Yes.
the top of page 3, where it says estimated average annual cost of the taxpayer is expected to increase by $32 per 100,000. I know you don't know exact, but is there any way to put language in there that would say to the effect is expected to increase by no more than $32, or is that
We think that is a little too,
specific?
well, it is an estimate, and I think that saying that to your patrons, I don't know that legally you couldn't. I think it's our advice to not put in something like that, because then you're in a position where if it is more than 32, then the patrons are upset with you. Does that make sense?
But at the end of the day, if it comes in at $40 per 100,000 based on, I mean,
Yeah, it can, and they're agreeing to levy regardless. I think it's just been because this language that you're referring to is the language that we've worked with the Secretary of State on to get kind of their approval that this is in compliance with the law. I think it would be my recommendation to stick with this, because we know we have validation or confirmation that if a patron tried to challenge this language as not complying with the current statute, that we think it would not survive such a challenge. I don't feel comfortable with that additional not more than, just because we don't have the Secretary of State's consent to it, I guess, blessing on it.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. And my concern is that it gets to that point and, they approve, let's just say that the voters approve $32 per 100,000. That's what they're expecting. All of a sudden it's coming in at $40 or $45 per 100,000. I would be upset.
Same.
And there's nothing, frankly, there's nothing you can do about that. They're agreeing to levy the taxes sufficient to pay back the principal amount of the bonds plus the interest on them. And that that amount will be set when the bonds are sold. The district does lock in an interest rate the same way you would on your mortgage, so you know what your payments will be at the time the bonds are sold. But there's no way to know what that is at the time voters are approving it. And so because this disclosure is required, that's kind of the best we can give them. I think patrons need to understand that the district's hands are tied unless we get the legislature to change that language.
So this might be a question for someone else, maybe Eric, but the $32 per 100,000, is that based on the 4.77% rate, which has a little bit of cushion in there? I understand that.
That's correct. It has some cushion in it. We started running numbers in September. Rates have gone up, and then they've actually come down a fair amount over the last 3 weeks. We've run lots of different iterations. So because we were just trying to keep everything so we could compare apples to apples, we kept that interest rate the same. Thought being that, with these ballot disclosures are in the code requires you to make these disclosures based on current conditions. Current conditions. What are current conditions? Current conditions are your current market value. We know that. That one's not going to change between now and the election. Your levy equalization subsidy percentage from the state. You're tall.
Yeah.
Levy equalization subsidy from the state, and that's a percentage we know, and that's not going to change before March. And then the third is the interest rate. And so we're thinking current conditions as close to when you file the paperwork with the county. And that's why we're thinking we want to update it when the time comes. So yes, I can tell you that I feel very comfortable that when we're talking about a not to exceed, you'd like to say not to exceed 32, right? We're saying the anticipated increase is $32 per 100,000. I feel very confident that it's going to be that or less, because we've got things or most of the things that could change will be in your favor. Market value likely to continue to change in your favor. Go up, meaning lower cost per 100,000. Interest rate, because we have some cushion now, we'll update that. We could leave the cushion in and not mess with it, and just that would be where you'd have some protection of not exceeding that number, and we could just leave it as is. But then you're talking about, I think the flip side of that is, if you're looking at 4.77%, and you could be saying 4.25, and how much interest cost is associated with that? Is that something that sways the voters? So there's I think they're good questions. It's a balance.
But even down the road, however many years, if this was approved and interest rates did take a significant drop, there is that opportunity to refinance.
Absolutely. Yep.
For a lower rate also.
Yep.
Which could drop that 32 to whatever it might be at that time.
Yes, I do.
There's a lot of ifs.
I feel pretty. And the other thing too, I mean, as I've done this over many years, where a district says we are putting this bond out there, our estimate is it's not going to exceed $32 per 100,000. The district's in control of when the bonds get sold, what environment they get sold in. If we get to the point where, rates have gone up, or the market, any number of things, we can say, well, let's not sell all of it. Let's sell this much so that we hit that 32 or less, and then just manage that on when you access the capital markets to make sure you're hitting that number. That could be a self-imposed.
And that's a very important key. I think a lot of people don't really understand is that we do have that management of those bonds, and when they're sold, and what interest rate and all that other
Correct.
stuff. Trustee Pearson, did you have a comment or a question? And then I'll jump on.
I don't know if you can answer these questions unless two, and maybe you can answer both or one. How do you come up with the $32? Is the first question.
Yeah. So so what we did, and the way that we did the analysis is we looked at, the district gave us some different numbers to evaluate, 25-year payback. So we took current interest rates, we added some cushion, we ran an amortization schedule and said, okay, for $210.2 million bond issue paid back over 25 years at this interest rate, the annual payment is estimated to be, I don't have it in front of me, but we come up with the annual payment is going to be and then less the levy equalization, let's call it 12.3 million. We then, because you have $8 million existing bond payment that's going to be paid off before these bonds start to get paid on, we subtract the 8 million from the 12.3, and you got 4.3. 4.3 divided into your current market value produces a tax impact of $32 per 100,000. We also said, okay, if you look at the ballot disclosure, the full cost of that 12.3 million annual payment is the $92. And the current cost of your 8 million for the existing bonds is 60. So we're saying it's going to, overall 92, you're currently paying 60. That's going to be paid off before you start paying on these. So your net is the 32.
Okay. So second question, and maybe you can clarify, sorry if I'm.
Yeah.
So if the other bond is going to be paid off, why are we increasing? Why are we paying rather? Because this bond, the one you're trying to get approved, is going to cost $32 per 100,000, right? Correct?
More.
More. That's with the other bond being paid off.
Correct.
So the 210,200,000 is going to cost $91 per 100,000.
92.
I mean, $92.
Yeah.
Dollars.
Yeah.
Because I kept hearing $32. I guess I don't know why we went from 32 to 92.
Sorry. So that tag team here. So that first sentence, the estimated average annual cost to the taxpayer on the proposed bond levy is a tax of 92 per 100,000 of taxable assessed value. That is statutorily required in that exact sentence with a plug-in for the 92 is statutorily required. And the way that the statute is written, it is only specific to the bond which is seeking to be approved. So that's only looking at the levy for this specific bond issue. It doesn't wrap in the district's existing bonds. And so that's what Eric was getting at when he's saying you have these bonds already right here, right? And they're paying off in a certain number of years. And if the district did not approve these bonds, then the levy would go down. And when those bonds are paid off, the bond levy for the district would be $0. So here, if you didn't have any existing debt right now, the bond levy would only be specific to these 2023 bonds. And so it would be $92 per 100,000. But your bond levy, when you certify it to the county, puts all of your bonds together into one, and you get one payment, and it goes on our tax bills as one line item. And so your existing bonds together with these proposed bonds is what we're talking about when we talk about this final sentence of the 32. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if that 32 is confusing to you,
Just tell me how much is it going to cost the taxpayers per 100,000 if we approve this 200 million, 210 million. Let's keep it simple. What are they going to be paying?
for this bond issue only, $92 per 100,000.
Thank you.
And if that's what you want the message to be, you can get rid of this highlighted sentence, these last two sentences in that third paragraph of the ballot, starting with currently and ending with per year. A lot of districts think it's helpful because it's not really 92 more from their existing, it's only 32 more from their existing. So I guess that's a decision for the board to make. You can't get away from that first sentence, it's required. That other two sentences are optional.
It's an additional $32.
Correct.
Per 100.
Yes.
Trustee Taylor?
Sorry, I'm gonna go way back.
Okay.
Back to my questions, and so I'll start with you, Chelsea, and then Eric, I've got one for you. So going back to the beginning of the resolution where we talk about what we're going to be utilizing the money for,
Mhm.
And just correct me at any time if I'm mishearing you, but my understanding was that you said that you felt it wise to leave a little bit of, I don't want to say open end, but ability for us to come back and possibly reuse the funds in another way. I glanced through this paragraph. Where does it leave me room to do that?
So we
Like,
think,
let's just say Centennial is struck by lightning, right? Right? Like,
Yeah.
let's look at it that way for the intents of my question. So where is that? Because it says safety and security projects throughout the district, including NHL-related site work, supporting infrastructure, furnishing equipment, final installment of such bonds to fall due no later, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
But to me, this really earmarks every ounce of that money.
So, okay, I'll answer that twofold. So
Gotcha.
if Centennial were to be struck by lightning
Right.
and you had to build a new one, I think that the replacement of Nampa High School and Centennial Elementary, you can do that
But
if
say
it
we
strikes.
decided we wanted to move it all of a sudden. We don't want to rebuild it and we're going to close it and I'm going to open Parker Way, right? Like I'm asking a very abstract question. Am I tied to what this language says? If all of a sudden a little bit down the road, we're like, for whatever reason, that was a misguided choice. I'm trying to speak very hypothetically.
And I think I'm a lawyer, so I'm
I know.
going in on your
I know,
words there. So
I know.
if you didn't want to reopen Centennial and the replacement for that facility was Parker, then I would argue that that's okay.
Gotcha.
But I wouldn't argue that you could somehow replace Centennial and also build Mountain View.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
It does. So if we were to deem all this and that Centennial wasn't the school that we wanted to refurbish, but we're going to close Centennial, rehome its students, you would still see that as a connection to Centennial. Not saying that we're going to do that for anybody listening. Not saying that that's going to happen. I just want to understand what you mean, because I get how tight this can be. And I really heard when you said when West Ada bonds, they bond a bit differently.
Mhm.
So I just want to understand.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be comfortable with that final hypothetical. I think it's very fact specific, but I think if you want more, so my reading of this was that safety and security projects throughout the districts, related site work, supporting infrastructure, furnishings, and equipment. To me, I would argue that, an extra 5 rooms on Centennial Elementary was supporting infrastructure in a way.
So then there is that one.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, my next one is for you. Thank you, Chelsea. So you gave me my 3, oh my gosh, and I wrote this down. You gave me the 3 ways, right, that we calculate bond. Totally understood that. Were you saying that there was two fluctuators, the market value and then the interest rate, and my third one was fixed? Remind me of the 3.
So there's really 3 big variables: the market value, bond levy equalization. That's the subsidy payment from the state.
Got it. That's what I needed to ask you about. That's where I was going. So does that change? Because I see that here where it says the interest rate anticipated, et cetera, and then they bring up the less the et cetera, the bond levy equalization payments. Does that ever change? Is that also an estimated?
Correct. That is estimated.
Okay.
It's based on your current the subsidy payment you currently qualify for. Again, because we talked about current conditions. I'm going to grab my other presentation, one I gave last time.
So I will tell you, Eric, you answered my question unless the other trustees want you to continue. You don't need to go through all that. I saw that presentation and I just couldn't think of what I was asking.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that subsidy percentage is actually the lowest it's been in the last 20 years, or I should say 20.
The variable that brought that lower was property value?
Market value per support unit is the likely, and there's been a lot of movement in that subsidy because of how COVID's impacted different districts throughout the state. It's all based on statewide averages. But for example, your most recent 10-year average of that subsidy was 25%, which higher subsidy means lower that you have to levy. So, I would want a higher subsidy for that from that standpoint. And so could it go lower? Yes. But I think over time, averages will probably go back towards what the historical average has been there.
And then I heard you say too that you felt like market value was continuing to increase on. So
there's 2 things, right? We are seeing a softening in home prices, but remember your market value that you're looking at today, that we're using for all these disclosures, is based on market value as of January 1 of 2022. So the next market value will be based on January 1 of 2023. So it depends on if home prices have started to decline. The question is, when do they start to decline relative to that January 1 number? Doesn't include new construction, anything added to the tax rolls.
Got it.
Yep.
Those were all my questions, and thank you.
So come come January 1st, we'd have to do another market. We're using 2022
That market value won't be reported
until.
officially until September of 2023.
One question for, maybe I'll ask you, but Chelsea, I think I understand what you were saying. So if we weren't to approve the bond, we would continue with $60 per 100,000 because of that.
Yes.
Yeah. I was thinking that was going to be all paid off because of 8 years. So.
Yes.
So thank you. So the question I have maybe for you is, do you know what the bond was that we borrowed? Was it 2007? What that amount was? And I know those are questions that are wanting to be answered. What?
And what's left?
Yeah, what's left? Is there details on what that was spent on? Those kind of questions.
We can get you that information.
Do you know offhand the amount we borrowed? Before?
I do know the now.
Dr. Russell.
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, Trustee Chris, do you have that information? Just give me a second here, pull it up for you.
We do have a quick graphic that we can put up with some of the information requests.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I believe it was 35 million, but we'll bring it up.
Yeah, the 2007 bond was 38.5 million.
We don't know how much is left.
Well, and then the 2005 bond was 45 million. And so that was a 20-year bond. There is, it's in the ballot disclosures. Hold on. There's roughly 24 million in outstanding bonds as of the election date. Our anticipation is that those bonds will be paid off not this year, but the following year. You'll have enough money to pay off the remaining balance in 2024.
So when those are paid off, this bond, if approved, it'll just be $32. Because that $60 part of that payment will be retired.
60 will go to zero.
Correct.
So in 2 years, if I get this right now, if this is approved and we move forward with the bonding and we're not waiting on issuing those bonds, we just move forward, then it's $92. In 2 years, I'm just throwing out numbers here on an estimate, when these current bonds are retired, then are paid off, then that drops to 32.
No.
No. Yeah.
For the current bond, or
No.
not for the current, but for the bond that might be approved tonight.
Yeah. So if the bond gets approved, the tax necessary to repay the new bond is going to be $92 per 100,000 based on your current market value, and that is not going to go down when the old bonds are paid off.
Correct.
It's that your current bonds that you're paying on are 60, and you're going to go from 60 to 92. So you got a 30, and then it's going to stay at 92 until your market value goes up, and as your market value goes up over the next 25 years, that'll come down from 92, but it doesn't go 92 and then back down to.
And that's what we talked about in our previous meetings, that this was going to happen. We're going to go ahead and, so that the taxpayers won't get an overburden. We're going to keep those same payments in there, and because they were used to that in their bill, right? And the increase will be like $37. So.
Chair Kirkman, Trustees, I can share with you if you wanted to know what the 2005-2007 bonds were used for. 2005, Endeavor and Lake Ridge Elementary Schools were built. Lone Star Middle School was built. Columbia High, their Pro Tech building. Looks like there were some upgrades done to their athletic facilities. Some property acquisition and just general maintenance was used in 2005. 2007, property acquisitions, renovating and upgrading Nampa High, and then it looks like New Horizons.
And And do we have plans for the 24 million that's remaining?
So that money is not remaining to be spent. That's how much debt is remaining to be paid off.
Okay.
So you
it
spent-
may have already been.
It's all been spent. It has
Okay.
to be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one other quick question.
Go
I apologize. So I'm looking at right now, we owe $60 per 100,000 for burden on taxpayers. And that $60 per 100,000 was based on the 2007 and 2005 bonds of 40 and 38 million, so for 78 million. And is that where you got that? I'm trying to see if it's comparable to the $32 estimate that you're coming up with now. If we can see how close you get, the $60 per 100,000 on less, a lot less than what we're borrowing now. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I see where you're going with it. There's a few other components. Let's see.
Can I try and take a stab at it?
Sure.
So the previous, it's about how much we have to pay back, not so much the total dollar amount that we're bonding for. So I believe it was Eric spoke about the 8 million is what currently where we're at. So that's at the 60. And then 12 million roughly, and I'm estimating just to try to make it easier. So 8 and 12, think about those numbers. Well, 12 is 1.5 times bigger than 8. So it's all of 8, which is at 60, and then half of 8, which half of 60 is 30, which is where that 32 comes in to 92. Does that make sense?
I felt like,
Kind of.
well, I felt like where she was going is saying we borrowed 83.5 million and we're paying back 60, and now we want to borrow 210, and you're telling us we're going to pay back 90. Isn't that where you were going?
How's
Yeah,
that?
I felt like that's where she was
Yeah.
trying to go. So I think that would be the best question to answer.
Yeah.
That was how I interpreted what she said.
Yeah. Well, so a couple things. We got 2 more bonds that you're still. So there is a 20. There's a 20. So you're still paying on the the 2003 authorization. So you have bonds in 2003, 2005, 2007. 2003, 2005, 2007.
How much was the 2003 bond? 39 million?
Yeah.
So I have a 45, a 38.5, and a 39. Thank
Yep.
you.
Those are all 20-year paybacks, and you're talking about a 25. So now you're spreading out a little longer, right? So that helps keeps the payment down a little bit.
So,
yeah.
if I can say something.
Hold on just a second. I think you were still in the middle of a response.
Yeah, no, but I think that's kind of the magnitude of it is it starts to make sense when you think about the original amount of debt and the fact that those were paid back over 20 years. This one being paid out back over 25, and you start to see that, yeah, the affordability starts to make some sense there.
Do you know the interest rates on those bonds, like the 2003, or are we just getting way too far into the weeds?
We can get all that information for you. It's
So, Trustee Dye,
Yeah, no, that's okay. Here's how it makes sense to me, okay? And maybe you can correct me if I'm totally messed up with this. But when you're talking about $92 for 100,000, and I look at an average home here in Nampa being 300,000, right? Then we're talking about $23 a month, right? $23 a month. That's the math I came up with. And you guys can do the math by yourselves and correct me if I'm wrong. Currently we're paying $60 for 100,000, right? With the current bonds that we have in place, that comes out to $15 a month for an average home. So the increase is only $8 from $15 to $23 a month. That is what I think we need to tell the public, and I wish that's what the ballot should say, because it really tells a different story. Because when they look at these big numbers, it kind of throws it. And I was confused too I was in the same place. It's like, okay, what are we doing? Are we adding another $60 per month? Or, to me, it was kind of confusing. And maybe a lot of people feel the same way. And Tracy, she was feeling like I was feeling before, but then I had to do the math. And my guess is a lot of people are not gonna be able to do the math because it is, they'll read it, oh, so it's too much. But really, the increase overall from what you're currently paying will be $8 per month.
Not for everyone.
Well, no,
Depending on-
and the average home.
Yeah.
In Nampa. And of course, the people that have bigger homes, they can afford it.
Not necessarily.
Well, then they should.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? And I think that to Trustee Vallier's comments, which are spot on, this is information that I think the district can or probably should provide in that detail. I mean, if someone calls the district and says, my house is assessed at $328,000, what are you guys gonna be getting from me? I really do think that's where the details come from, is the district. And that, I would imagine the district, well, not imagine, we want the district to make sure that that information is provided on our website, FAQs, all of that open transparency. And I know for a fact that these gentlemen that are in this room right now their doors are wide open to anybody who wants to come in and really have a discussion about what this might be, if we move forward and do this. Trustee Taylor, did you have a comment?
I actually just have
I
one
can
more
always tell,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, I was listening. And just for clarification, because I know that there's a lot of confusion. And so I think it's really important that we do discuss like we've kind of picked apart language, which is good. But the levy versus bond issue, I think it's also important that we clarify that $60 already includes what our taxable repayment is, correct? So that $92 is the full taxable rate that the school will collect. There's not addition. With the levy that was just passed, because the levy is repayment. I just think it's important to clarify that. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that, because I think that there's just confusion about bond versus levy. Are they one and the same? I understand that it's a $32 increase from the taxable threshold that we're already at, so I totally get it, but totally understand that it's a hard concept to get. I totally do. But I also think that the bond levy one is the same, so maybe we should spend some time picking your brilliant brain about that.
The bond levy, which
Just that we're already going to be paying back that levy with that $60. So it's not $92 plus an additional amount of money. It's that $92 estimated full tax all in.
yeah, we and to so you're in good company, because every district that's had to sort of, since these new election disclosure laws were implemented about 4 years ago that require this disclosure based on current conditions, the concern for a lot of districts has been, if I just talk about the average, the way the code requires us to disclose the cost of this bond based on current conditions is $92, right? It's how the code is written. And that sounds like it's going to be an increase of $92 compared to what I'm paying right now.
Right.
Which is not a fair way to look at it, in my opinion, because right now I'm paying $60.
Right.
And when I start paying the $92, the $60 will go away.
Correct.
Right?
Right. So it's just that full
So,
tax all in.
so how much more am I going to pay if the bond passes compared to what I'm currently paying? It's $32. We've talked about a bunch of different ways to write that. And we're somewhat, I think, limited in terms of what is allowed, because again, as Chelsea pointed out, it's a contract with the voters.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to read it. The estimated average annual cost to the taxpayer on the proposed bond levy is a tax of $92 per 100,000 of taxable assessed value per year based on current conditions. It'd be nice to cut down a few words there, but
that's where we're
probably not going to let me. Currently, the district collects a bond levy in the amount of $60 per 100,000 of taxable assessed value per year that will expire before the proposed bonds are levied. Therefore, if the proposed bonds are approved, the estimated average annual cost of the taxpayer is expected to increase by $32 per 100,000. When I read that, if I stop and pause and also I want to make sure the math works, right? 92 minus 60 equals 32. But I've gone around and around with different ways of saying that same thing, and it makes sense to some people if you say it this way.
other people if you say it a different way.
Right. I just think it's
Yeah.
important that people
It's hard-
understand that there's not an addition on top of that levy that's gonna come into play at some point.
Yeah.
So maybe, not that I know any more than you, because you guys are the experts at this. But maybe at the end of that first sentence, you can put which includes, instead of putting currently the district collects a bond, you can put which includes the current bond being collected in the amount of $60 or 100,000.
Yeah, but it's technically not. I mean technically that 92 is a standalone. It's 92 for this new bond.
Yeah.
It doesn't include the 60 you're paying on the. What we're saying is it's going to cost 92. It's like I'm going to get a new. Like what do I want to like? What I'm going to get a new boat, right? My boat's going to cost how much do boats cost? Anybody know how much a boat costs? Way too much.
Depends on what.
Yeah.
boat.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a $50,000 boat, and I had car payments on a $30,000 car. I got the car paid off. Who knows why I'm buying a $50,000 boat when I got a $30,000 car? But all of a sudden, my payments on that $30,000 car are going to go away. And so all I'm thinking about is how much more do I have to, if I convert my car payment to the boat payment, how much more is the boat payment?
But in many ways, we're consolidating the payments.
Well, because we're going to pay, the old bond's going to get paid off. It's going to be,
Yeah,
it's going to be.
but the payments remain the same.
But if we wait 3 years, if you run this election in 3 years, you'll just say 92, and you won't be able to say, we won't even say because you'll be levying zero for the old bond, because the old bond will be paid off.
That's the hard part for
Right.
to understand.
That old bond at some point is going to get paid off, and that old bond, and what we're saying in this plan is that we're not going to start paying on the new bond until the old bond's paid off. And once that old bond's paid off, once that $8 million goes away, then we're going to be paying on the new bond, and it's 92.
If I can, I would like to know or ask our superintendent what he thinks about the language.
Chair Kirkman, trustee By, I think the language is confusing, but I think it's legally written correct. And I think to a layman person, it's hard to understand. I was given the same language over the break, and I had the very same questions you guys do. Like, wait a second, whoa, in my head, no, wait. And I had to do the math in my head and realize, oh, okay, the current model would be paid off. This one's going to be exactly as Eric just mentioned. This is going to cost 92. The increase is 32, as we mentioned. And then I broke it down by monthly payments, similar to what you did, trustee By, so I could try to understand that as well. Because I wanted to make sure that what we were communicating about the increase was accurate when we were doing our work sessions. So unfortunately, I believe this is the way the legislatures and them wanted us to write this ballot language. I don't think it is clear, but that's what we're required to work in, and it's been that way for 4 years, and every school district in the state has had to meet those requirements.
Any other questions, comments?
Comments before we vote.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we're at that. Yeah. Absolutely, go ahead if you have some.
I'll wait till, I mean, there's a million people who need to get some comment before we vote.
Yeah. I also want to just throw this out there too, because in light of some emails that we've received, and they're all public record, there is a concern. I share the same concern as I'm sure most of everybody. $32 is $32, and $32 a month is in this, with inflation and everything else. What?
It's a year per 100,000.
I'm sorry. You're right. It's 32,000 per year. $32,000. $32 per 100,000. Yes, got that. It's not per month. Let me rephrase that. However significant or insignificant the increase might be, it's going to be felt by some. And that's the concern that we've heard from people in the community through emails. And so I know that this board has decided to move to this $210 million option D, but I may be out of line here, I'm gonna throw it out here, but what about the consideration of option C, which is a little bit less, and I can't remember what that amount was. 180.5, which would be $18 or give or take $1, $19 instead of the $32. I don't know which, I'm just throwing that out here for consideration, and maybe that's something that we could take a look at. I know there would have to be some changes in the what we've just spent the last hour talking about here from the attorneys, but I think they're minor, just more number changes than some calculations. I don't know. What do you think, Trustee?
Can I just comment? I think
Please.
that was C plus, like the C plus
was
a
that the
little,
C
which
plus
was
one?
C plus
Okay.
the safety and security. The C alone was 78.7,
C plus was the one.
which was about $18 per 100,000.
Was C 18 or C plus 18?
C plus is 19.
$19.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, it's not going to get everything that D is going to get, but there's still be that substantial. And I apologize if I'm asking you to rehash what we've already gone over, but I think it's incredibly important when we're talking about this much money and asking our taxpayers to do this. So I don't know. What do you think, trustees?
I want to make a comment on that. Because I was thinking about all the emails we've gotten, and I really didn't think there were that many. I was expecting more. And I know the links were going out to a lot of people to comment and to be here. There's a need. If there wasn't a need, we won't be talking about this. And I know there's all these different sides and all these different people, saying, hey, this is going to cost us a lot of money. Well, yes, it is going to cost money because that's what it's supposed to do. And they're saying, well, we're not teaching our students are not progressing. Why should we give money to the students? Well, they are. Okay, COVID did a number on a lot of people. And it's affected a lot of families. But at the end of the day, what you're getting for this amount of money, which is basically an extra $8, which to some people is a cup of coffee, it's incredible. And we got to fight for what the school needs. I mean, that's what I feel we got elected for. I don't think I got elected, or not elected. I didn't get elected, by the way.
Thanks for the disclaimer.
I was appointed because I feel like we're here to make sure that the kids get the things they need in order to become better members of our world, of our society. And we also need to give teachers better opportunities in classrooms. We also need to provide for the safety. Heck, if a school shooting just happened, you guys will be all over the place saying, why didn't we do this? Okay, let's stop the crying and start thinking about the kids. And I think people need to get off their couches and start visiting schools and see what the needs are. Because there are needs. Okay, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever. This has nothing to do with that. This has to do with, and I'm talking to the people out there in the video that are watching, sending emails and all this stuff. Go out there and look at the need. And whatever thing happened in the past, when you have, because you have beef with someone or something that happened, get over it. Because you're not looking out for the best interests of the students. Okay, this is. I am the most conservative person in this room. I think. I fly flags on my pole in my house that people will go, wow. But I'm telling you, when there's a need, we need to be able to make that need, and the city can do it. And I think we have the ability to make a difference. And I want to shoot for the stars. And I don't think 220 million is the stars, because actually the need is much greater than that. Much, much greater than that. But this is what is going to get us through another 10, 20 years. So, I mean, that's all I have to say.
Tracy Pearson, would you have a comment, or do you want to-
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, and I'm sorry, it's gonna be opposite of you, Marco, but that's why we're all here. And I was an elected official, and I'm going back to one of our policies, 105, district purpose. And the purpose of Nampa School District is to work collaboratively and innovatively with our community and families. And it's the trustees are responsible to make sure that this purpose is being fulfilled. Right now, I don't believe that it's a good time to, the impact on the community, I think it would be too overburdened right now, because the inflation, and I've had at least 10 emails, and the survey, even with only 277 people responding, there still was a lot of reasons why they are just not wanting this bond at this time. I think with the economic uncertainties right now, I think market-wise, things are going down. I think interest rates are going up. I believe that the gas prices are up. The community is very burdened right now. It's not that I don't think the schools need things. I just think that we have been asking taxpayers for a lot of tax-paying money, and I mean, my mortgage alone has gone up $200 a month because of taxes and insurance. Things are really burdensome right now, and I don't live lavishly. I'm only thinking of the community. I'm thinking of the families and the impact that anything would be right now. And I just think the timing is just not right. I'm not saying that we don't come up later and make a bond. And also, I don't think that last meeting was the first time that I was aware, or that a lot of the community was aware, that this was for a bond resolution. I don't think that enough people have been made aware in the community, and it came out right at Thanksgiving holiday, and here we're having this meeting right after everybody just came back from out of town and holiday, and yeah, there's not a lot of people right now, but I feel like it's been pressured and pushed to happen tonight, and I just think it's a little too soon before we make the decision.
I want to speak to that because when was the first time, and Ms. Lamont, you may need to refresh my memory, or staff, when was the first time we started talking about possible bonding or any of that? Well, we've been 5 years in the works of facility, in needs. So there's that discussion that's been going on for years. But when did this board, do you remember off the top of your head, anybody, when we started talking about the possibility of bonding?
Chair Kirkman, trustees, it was when the facilities committee had wrapped up its overall look at the condition analysis, the educational adequacy, and the enrollment report. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at Mr. Stoffer if he can remember, because he was on the committee. I think at that point, when all that facility work was done, we saw the actual number of the need, the $84.5 million of needs that we have within the district. And I think that's when the discussion of the bond being a possibility right now. And again, the timing of that on top of our current bonds that are coming close to the end of their life, I think is why there's that discussion now. If we had 10 years left in our current bond, and we weren't able to pay that off, I don't think we'd be having that discussion, because you don't want to bond on another bond. So why the timing? The timing is because the facilities committee ended. What day was that? Do you have that, Mr. Stoffer, roughly?
It was August.
In August, and that we know that we got within a year or two of our final bond. So
And that was
since August.
And that was a presentation at a public meeting, correct? All right, so it's been at least since August that we've been at least broached the subject of a bond. And we've had multiple meetings since then, work sessions, all been public meetings. Have they been well attended? No, they haven't. I mean, there's been people online that have watched, and they commented through email. So I will disagree respectfully, Trustee Pearson. Tracy sounds so much like Trustee Pearson, that the public has had many opportunities to get involved in the discussion about bonding and facilities and all of that. And this is not something that's been sprung on the public at the last minute, the day after Thanksgiving. But this is the process that the bonding always goes through this same process. It doesn't change. The resolution, well, they've had every opportunity to know and understand and ask questions. So, I'm a little bit disappointed there's not more people here tonight to provide public comment. How many people do we have online right now? We have 11 people watching right now. Now, will some of them watch the video? Absolutely. There'll be more people. And I get that people are busy. Totally get it. But not making excuses anymore. I'm sorry. And if we move forward with this, the district provide every opportunity for conversation and discussion and explanation, and we'll have more meetings and we'll talk about this some more. So, it's whatever direction we take. I just wanted to throw that other option C+ out there because there is concern. I'm well aware of the concern. I feel it too. Everybody feels it with that additional expense. However slight it might be for some, or however major it might be for some. But Trustee Taylor.
Sure. Dr. Russell, do you have, I haven't seen, and that could be my plight, the survey. Well, when was our work session on the bond?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, we had a work session November 3rd, I believe.
Perfect. I'm going to go back to that.
Some of those options were presented initially.
Perfect. So I need to go back to that. But really quick, since we're bringing up the surveys, I know that we had the video out there and that we were looking at comments. Do we have that feedback tonight for you to share?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, I believe we do. I'm looking at Mr. Stauffer and Mr. Keefe to see if they could possibly bring that information up.
From the 14th.
Yes, that's correct.
We put it in the packet on the 17th.
Thank you. And do we have any more information off the video that you guys were instructed to do? I know that we had we threw the video out and there was a lot of stuff that had come back. Where is all of that feedback?
It is in the 14th package.
Got it. You're like, I just said that, Brooke. I got loud and clear a second time. Thank you.
You'll have all the responses that we received.
Thank you.
Can I ask, since you brought up the survey as well, how long that survey was available, and is it on there now for people to answer? How long was it available, and is it still available?
Trustee Kirkman and Trustee Pearson, we were instructed to leave it open for the duration from one meeting to the next meeting. So we had it open from Tuesday to Monday morning, which was the 3rd when we had our meeting that afternoon.
So about a week.
It was about four and a half days. I would say more appropriate about 4.5 days.
So if I remember right, it went out to 15,000 parents.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I think it should have gone out to.
Well, it was published on our social media, so everybody had access to it.
13,000, only 277 people responded, but you only didn't even have it up there a week.
As per instructed by the board.
Oh.
If I can say something.
Trustee Valier?
What I love about this process is that we have to look at what the needs are and see what's best for the kids, and then the citizens decide. The people decide, and to me that's a full display of democracy right there. And that's why I love this. That's why I'm shooting for the moon. And that's why I believe we need to figure or stay with that same number of 200 and whatever million.
10 to 200 million.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
I move that we approve the bond election resolution as presented in the total amount of $210,200,000.
I second it.
All right.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, so it's been motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
So I'm moving this one because this has been ongoing. That's part of the hard thing about this job is that your job, you're taking on other trustees' jobs. And so the board it's not like there was one board and now it's this board. No, we're the Nampa School District board. And so this conversation has been happening since well over 5 years now, and multiple times. And I get that people may or may not be paying attention to everything that we are doing, but I do believe it's voters' job to be paying attention. So if they are concerned and they're concerned about the times of voting, like there are more. The great thing about now, it's not just posted in the newspaper. It's not just posted on the building here. Like, we are advertising wherever we can to try and reach people. We're not trying to snowball anyone. We're not trying to sneak anything in. We are trying to do what is right for our students. It comes to me because a lot of people don't remember that in 2008, our legislators removed, and it may not have been the legislators, it may have been our governor, I can't remember who it was, but removed tax funds that came to each school district to pay for buildings, exactly what the bond, and that's the only thing the bond does pay for, is buildings that kids are in and being taught in. And that money, that tax income that school districts across the state saw was taxed by everyone in the entire state. And hopefully we all understand that's a better way to tax it, because we've got then everyone wins. The more people, right, that are paying into it. You know, you've got homes in Boise that are more expensive than homes here, right? And they're paying that tax to help us, to help Melba, to help Shelley, to help wherever we are. Well, that was taken away, and it was told that it was going to come back. Well, they, like many things, they didn't bring that money back ever. So now this is why people are seeing districts to have bonds and run supplemental levies, is because we now have to come up with those funds ourselves. So this is something this district has put off and pushed off, which is why you see I think it was 84 million in deferred, correct me, right? 84 million in deferred maintenance that definitely needs to get done. And then there's more than that. I think it was 250 million that the committee came up with, that was like, these are things that really need to get done, and attention needs to be provided. It doesn't happen overnight. And it is a burden. And the great thing about it is, I think that our community will have the opportunity to voice truly how they feel. The things that I've been hearing from the input and from the meetings is that, yes, I mean, and some people are asking, why aren't you asking for more, right? And there's some people saying, don't ask for anything. And so in my heart, this is the middle ground and the responsible amount to ask for. And the great thing is that I don't get to say this is what we get to do, right? I just get to be one little voice for folks in this community. And it is forgotten that I was voted into this, but I was voted in 2 terms, actually. And happily do this because it's so important for our kids. This community cares. Our community, time and time again, has come together. So it's why I think that we are doing what we've been asked and tasked to do as trustees. But now I'm just saying, give it the opportunity to let our voters either back us up or not back us up, and we'll find out really quick if they disagree.
Yeah, I'd like to comment as well. So I definitely feel like we've been prepared for the phone conversation, and I have to be really honest. I was the only person who, well, myself and Randy and Greg, that really talked about the amount at our work session that I attended remotely. And just because I am very fiscally mindful, I really felt like we should bond lower, but I really felt like that bond amount was pushed up by the 3 trustees in attendance, and it was because that need is so great. And so ultimately, after that deliberation and discussion, it made a lot of sense why we were shooting out the gate to take care of those issues. Centennial, Nampa High, Kaylin, I know that's why you're here. We've needed replaced for a long time. I think we have put it off for a long time. I do think it's an opportunity for us to allow the community to decide what to do. I think that actually I've been impressed with the amount of due diligence that this administration has done, provided, and how transparent that they've been about what took place prior to our being here. I have felt very informed. I do want to point out that a lot of these things that I got from somebody in my zone about the proposed bond, as far as like the one now, I love that we answered that. The old one isn't paid off, but we're not bonding until it is. So we're being very transparent about the additional fiscal impact. So I actually feel like we're running it in complete transparency. I actually like the language as it's put in there. My concerns were the same: the gas, electricity, groceries. I think it's affecting everybody, and that's why I like that this will be a vote and it's a super majority. So I think that the community has a lot of time to decide what they want to do, and if people do want to take sides or decide that that's how they want to do it. But I do think that we have to be good stewards of the need within this district. My children are still in public school, regardless of how people feel about that. That's the schooling that my children get, and a lot of children in our community. So I actually believe that the district jumped out the gate a little bit more conservative. I think that the trustees saw the need in watching and being a part of that conversation. I think it really opened my eyes to, we're either going to have to ask for more now or ask for more later. We can, again, pay it back. So, like, there's a lot of leniency that we have, like Jeff pointed out in discussing it with Eric. There are things that we can do or things that we change. But I truly feel like this is the path that we're going to have to take if we're going to start to actually make the changes in our districts that are necessary and start to rezone and get people moved from Nampa High. And the school, as much as I love it, because I like Nampa High to the core, so I get really emotional about the whole Nampa High thing. But my grandpa graduated from Nampa High, you guys, my grandpa. So at this point, and everybody following, and my children, and so on and so forth. And so, as hard as it is to see anything about that school change, I do realize that it's reached its life, and some of our schools are becoming an excessive burden upon us with their maintenance conditions. So no, I've actually thought that the district has done a great job. I thought that I was more aligned with Greg and Randy and their fiscal responsibility, and then the trustees started talking about it and deciding really where we needed to put that money and what would be great for kids. So that's really where this high ticket comes from. So I don't feel like the wool's been pulled over our eyes. Multiple meetings that we've attended, we've talked about bonding. In multiple meetings that I've had with our administration, we've talked about bonding. So I feel in the know, and that's it.
Any other comments to the motion?
One more quick comment.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that I do believe that it's nice that the voters can decide. I just felt like it's not a good time, and I'm just here to represent what I hear in the community, and I see so many burdened, and so that's why I'm here. I'm not here for me, I'm here for the community, and I see how everybody's so burdened, and I just think the timing's not good. And yes, not as many people are engaged as I'd like to see, and we work hard, and we are not getting the engagement we would like. However, I'm an elected official, and so I'm still here to represent the people regardless of engagement. And that's what I'm here for. And
Okay, there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Do we need to read that motion again? Make sure we all.
If you want, I don't think.
Okay.
Didn't she just motion to pass the bond resolution?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, wait,
I just want to make sure everyone knows what the vote's going to be on.
And I did give them a note because I wanted that on the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
nay.
Okay, the motion carries. Just again, this is simply a motion to put this resolution on the ballot.
That's it.
It's up to the voters to determine whether or not this passes. Just a couple of follow-ups. Now that that has been approved, the district's going to shift into high gear and start that communication piece. And I think the board and I think the trustees are going to be on your guys' case about making sure that that communication piece does happen. Through some of the emails that I've received, and I'm sure all the other trustees have, I think they came to all of us, I just kind of gathered all of the questions that I could find out of those emails, and I just kind of put them in a document so I could kind of see what specific questions were being asked. I know, Dr. Russell, you've seen these questions, and your staff have seen these questions also. What I would like to see, and trustees chime in, as we instruct the district to move forward, the staff to move forward and I don't know if you can get it up tomorrow. I'm looking at the IT guru here, but a FAQ page that is on our website that people can go and click on these questions that have been posed specifically and any others that you might anticipate coming your way in the future. Calculation tools, any of that kind of stuff. And then again, open. I know your doors are open to anybody who wants to come in and talk. I'm sure that the schools are open for folks who want to come in and see what the schools look like, and I'm sure they can make appointments, come in and see what Nampa High looks like, the state of Nampa High right now, and Central and Centennial. So this is where it gets busy for you, well, busier for the staff. Trustee Taylor and then Trustee Dahlia.
So what I want to direct is I want to make sure that with every regular meeting, we have a bond update just to make sure that they're covered on every regular meeting. The next thing, oh my gosh, I lost it because I was intently listening to it. Jeff said to not repeat it. It's okay. So I want to make sure that happens so that we have an update so that it's at every, I'll come back to it.
All right,
That
Trustee Dahlia.
No, I just wanted to mention that there's been some emails coming from people that there were some good questions, and I've sent them to Superintendent Russell, and he's asked him to come and meet with him. They're very open.
Very.
People don't you don't just have to send the questions. You can just make the appointment.
Yes.
And get him, because there's so many rumors out there that are false.
Yes.
Yeah, and people just don't know. And it's easy to believe somebody else's word, but get it straight from the source. If you're going to get surgery, don't go to a shoe shiner. They will not shine your stomach very well. You need to have the surgeon, somebody who lives it, experiences it, and has a study for it. So please go to them.
Trustee Taylor, do you remember?
I didn't, but I do want to say something off of that for all that are watching this meeting. I would agree with that. I think that if you've had an issue in the past, or you have questions, or you felt like in the past that maybe you weren't heard, or you have an issue that you need to bring forward, we have a new administration, we have a new superintendent, and he deserves to get a chance to answer those questions or hear what those concerns are. This is a fresh set of ears. This is a fresh board, and I am seeing monumental changes being made this year.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Oh, I got this bump. Don't be jealous.
Before we move to the next agenda item, Trustee Pearson. Trustee Pearson. My gosh.
I just wanted to bring up we had talked about Mr. Russell, Superintendent Russell, about it. Now we can work on maybe a mass mail out to all taxpayers to inform them about the bonds, pros and cons. I mean, maybe a link to some of the hard questions and confusing tax things, because that's my biggest concern. I think everybody should vote, but I think, yes, we need more people informed, because people aren't, they're busy in life like all of us, but I would really like people to be informed so that people will get out and vote.
Sure, Trustee Pearson, thank you. Yes, and actually, that would be a good segue to kind of move into the direction we're talking about with our next guest, which will, we had asked to come, not knowing if there would be a resolution passed, but if it was, I want to make sure the board was informed about what does that look like? I mean, what does it look like to gather information and get that out? And there's quite a bit of information that we have to share here. So I don't know if Mr. Crawford wants to introduce some or.
Before we move to that agenda item, I think it's very important that the public know that the district staff, the district personnel, information. They're not going to. So when they're seeking information from the district, that's what they're going to get. They're going to get the brass tacks, the facts, that kind of stuff. That's not advocating this way or another. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Can I clarify
Please.
that?
Oh, you got to clarify.
Well, I mean, like,
Go ahead.
I just, like, if there's a teacher in the district on district time and with district provided materials to not do that. But if that teacher is out in the community and somebody asks, hey, I know you work at Centennial, talk to me about how you feel about this bond and how are you gonna vote, they can freely
Oh,
share
absolutely.
and advocate for it on their own time and own dollars, just like they
And
can't.
own equipment.
And own equipment. They can't, from their school district tablet or laptop, email their parent list and say, y'all need to vote yes
Yeah.
for this or y'all need to vote no. They can't do either one. So just
No,
FYI.
that's, and thank you so much for that clarification, because very important. Okay,
If I can say
Yeah.
one more thing, I know last time we talked about involving the city using some of their mailers, the rec center, all these different places where we can get. I hope you guys are working on that. Hopefully next time we meet, you guys give us a presentation of the plan of attack. That's all I have to say.
We can direct that. Is that something you want to direct? I think we should be really clear, and I think that was a good directive. So how about a rough plan of attack next time we meet,
That
if
would be
possible?
awesome.
yeah, well, it should be that part of that regular update that we get from district staff.
Yeah, but I liked that rough plan of attack.
So, any other questions, comments on this particular agenda item before we move to the next one? All right. Next agenda item is potential pre-bond work. I think this is, Mr. Stock, you're gonna introduce it.
I'll introduce you. Thank you, guys. Really, my time will be really quick. Just to introduce, we'd like to introduce again Tracy Richter from HPM and Ben Henson, who's also from HPM. Also, you'll see sitting over there is Mark Reddish from Amoresco. These are the teams that have been helping us over the last 5 years of getting all the information and really detailing what is going on in our buildings and the needs in our buildings. But today, their focus really will be discussing what do we do now that we have a resolution passed? What are some things we need to be aware of? And how do we move forward from this point until March when we vote? So I'm going to turn some time over to them.
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees. It's great to be back and see you again. So there is, now that you've passed a resolution, there are steps you need to take to prepare yourself in case a bond passes or doesn't pass. In some way, remember, we created a facilities master plan to guide you for facilities improvement. We didn't create a facilities master plan to get a bond. We didn't do it. You have to have a pathway of facilities improvement regardless. If you have the money to do it or not, it becomes a prioritization model then. And so the next stage you have to go into is likely, and this is what Mr. Henson's going to cover, and is going to talk about program development, about getting down to more details of the program and creating those details. So when you get to that point of action, whether that be a bond pass that will pay for it or you don't, you'll have schedules in place, you'll have specific costs in place, you'll have a lot of things in place that are necessary to get you moving forward in a facility plan. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over and I'm going to give you more of an FYI session on bond planning from a political action committee stance and what outside the district will be doing to educate, once again, and provide details and transparency from a community perspective. So I'm going to give an overview of that. But right now I'm going to turn it over to Ben, and he's going to take you through what program development means and why it's important to get you to the next stage of your capital program.
Okay, are we going to go through the presentation? Or? Yeah. Perfect. And is there a clicker or do I? He's my guy. Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you all for letting me be here today. Chair Kirkman, Dr. Russell, trustees. Really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all tonight. If you could jump to the first slide. Wow. It looks like it kind of got beat up a little bit in translation, but you know, big picture, these are kind of the steps that we're going through in order to advance the capital program. As Tracy's mentioned, and everybody has talked about and presented to you guys, facilities master plan has been produced and is essentially complete. The bond planning effort is ongoing. A lot of the decisions that need to be made have been made in terms of, you know, the amount the bond will be, but there's a lot of work to do left. But that's obviously what Tracy's going to talk about this evening. What I wanted to talk about is a little bit about what program development is and the things that need to happen between now and the time you actually want to begin work, assuming that the bond passes. That's what, you know, kind of the distinguishing characteristics are going to be between Tracy and I. Tracy's going to be talking about a little bit about what needs to happen in order to get information out, hopefully have a successful bond program. In parallel, assuming the bond passes, the district's going to want to be able to go to work and go to work efficiently and effectively with the stakeholders, both internally and externally. So that's what program development is. We've actually created a division of our company that all we work on is alignment of the owner, the scope, budget, schedules, and that kind of stuff before the time when the owner goes out and hires bigger teams, architects, consultants, contractors, and all that kind of stuff, so that we make sure that we get off on the right foot, so that we don't get 6 months down the road and then have to circle back to start because the scope wasn't aligned with the schedule and those kinds of things. So if you can move to the next slide, please. I'm going to get a little bit more granular as we move through these slides. There's only 2, so we're going from here to the next one. We'll be very granular. But what we want to achieve is internal stakeholder alignment and governance. We want to have the processes in place. We want to have the information organized in a way that when we go out and hire contractors and architects and stuff like that down the road, that we're presenting the right information to them that they need to be able to move the ball forward effectively. First thing on the list is a master budget. And I'll use Nampa High School as an example. Nampa High School is plugged in at $100 million, I think, in your cost calculation. But if we ask our architect to go out and design $100 million worth of high school, that's going to be a little bit too much, right? He actually probably needs to be designing between $80 and $85 million of construction, because we're going to have furniture and IT and AV and other stuff that needs to be accounted for. So one of the things that we want to do is go ahead and start distributing those budgets appropriately, so that when we get ready to start, everybody knows what we're doing. Everybody knows what the guidelines are. Okay. Same thing with the master program schedule. We want to go through and lay out all the projects that are accounted for. We want to factor in time for procurement activities, factor in times for reviews, factor in times for presentations back to the board, and all those sorts of things. Factor in the coordination of construction with operations of the school system. Obviously, mission critical is continuing to be able to educate kids while construction is going on. So we want to build a master program schedule that ultimately, is the plan for executing the bond in this time that we have between now and the time that the actual bond gets passed. We want to identify all the approval processes internally. What does that look like to approve a contract? Who has to approve it? To approve a change order? Who has to approve a change to any kind of budget? We want to map all that kind of stuff out, so that, again, when we start, everything is known, right? We want to basically have a project execution or a program execution manual, that we all use to govern how we do work. Project controls. We want to make sure that project controls are in place. Project controls is a term that we use for a group of tools and processes to make sure things start when they're supposed to start, make sure they finish when they're supposed to finish, make sure that commitments aren't made in excess of the current and approved budget. Okay, so we typically use an online management platform to control workflow of different approvals. That make sure that they go through the right steps before work is released. And using that same online management platform, we can create outward-facing dashboards to present information in a very transparent way to the community, to the board, to whomever wants to be able to see that information. So that's an important thing to go ahead and iron out what that looks like, and have that ready to go. And then communication strategy, and that's kind of the same thing with project controls and communication. What does internal reporting need to look like? What does reporting back to or updating the board need to look like? And what does community-facing communication need to look like? So we want to work through all those kinds of details and have that information ready to go when the bond hopefully passes. Procurement strategies and market analysis, those are fairly straightforward things, but again, we want to go ahead and work with the administration to be able to come back and develop a plan for what that needs to look like. You know, we need to make sure that we all understand internally what procurement needs to look like. We need to understand things like, do we want a master architect to oversee all projects so that we ensure consistency in look and feel and that kind of stuff? Or do we not want to do that? You know, before we, you know, in the event the bond passes, we don't want to have to be thinking about those things then. You know, we want to be able to march along, because when the bond passes, people are going to then be wanting to see progress. Okay, and if we have to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out how to get organized, then, you know, that really doesn't look great for anybody. And then, you know, again, presenting clear information for our design and construction partners that we will ultimately need. Like I was using an example of making sure that the architect has a good target budget for the right schools, you know, for the school, as opposed to the overall program budget. They've got to have the construction budget so they can design for the right numbers. We want to work with the local design community and construction community and be able to break down those budgets even further into target budgets for different trades so that all of their design partners have the right numbers to design to. We do all this to be able to, again, efficiently start your bond program. You know, we don't want to get started, get 4, 5, 6 months down the road with design and find out, oh, geez, we have a budget problem. You know, we want to make sure we have all the information organized up front so that we can eliminate the need to come back, because that does nothing but cost money and time for the school system. If you move to the next slide. There's a little bit more detail, granular look at what we were talking about in terms of planning. I'm not sure if you guys can see that on your laptops or not. I apologize, text is a little bit small, but we think this is about, you know, a 3 or 4 month effort to try to get all this stuff organized, which, you know, coincidentally fits within kind of the time frame that we expect to finish up the bond planning process and go out for bond. So, but you can see, if you do have that list in front of you, a little bit more granular look at some of the steps that we expect to take from a program development standpoint. But it all centers around those 3 big buckets: stakeholder alignment and governance, procurement and execution strategies, and then being prepared to go to market when the bond passes. So, anybody have any questions before I hand this back off to Tracy?
Questions?
No.
No.
I thought about it for a second.
Perfect.
You know, this might be
and you can circle back.
Yeah.
This might be a very elementary question, but I'm assuming, for sake of whoever might be listening or will listen to this, that you and your company are the ones that are going to be managing this process from beginning to end.
Well, I think that's something that we got to work through, okay, right? Because
Chair Kirkman, trustees, we'd have to go to open bid process and
for this
portion. Yeah,
okay.
What we have to do is kind of go out and design what things are we looking for. I think what our folks are here today is just to give us a general idea for us as a board to kind of understand all this entailed. It's been 15 years since the community has done something like this, and so it's more information.
Well, and that's what I wanted to make clear, because I think might be some people watching this and thinking you're the ones going to take this through to the end.
Yep.
To fruition. I just want to make sure that no, there is the board that makes a decision on who's going to have that contract.
Absolutely. While we would love to do it, we recognize and respect the fact that it's got to be an open process.
So, if we're going to open bidding process, where's that on the timeline?
Well, I think we see the program development piece as a potential extension of our current services. I think when we were talking about going out for a program management type assignment to manage all, design and construction, for the life of the bond, certainly that has got to be an open procurement process. So I did not include a procurement process for the program development piece because it's a fairly limited scope.
Chair Kirkman, Trustee, I believe Mr. Stoffer has some general thoughts around it. And again, just general thoughts of what the
Chairman Kirkland, Board of Trustees, as we go through this process, we know it takes us a little bit of time to go through procurement and to do our RFQs and and get to that point where we feel comfortable with the selection process. Typically, if you look at our history, it takes us about 2 months to do that. So I just look at our board history and how we do that. It's approximately a 2-month process to do that. So if you look at what was mentioned a little bit earlier, look at that March timeframe and start looking back, you can start to kind of earmark really in January, February, we need to start looking at those and putting it on our agendas to discuss and then have those discussions from there forward. So I'm just looking at our history and how we have worked, and that seems to be about our right protocols. When we do an RFQ, we can put it out for about a month, and then we can get the results, and then we would evaluate that, and we would bring you the evaluation information, and then you'd be allowed to make that decision as a board. So following the same process, but I think if you're looking at our time frame and how we have worked together, it's probably gonna be about a 2-month process.
Just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that we're about to do when we go out to build the new high school, we'll approve all of those things just like the board will. I'm just reiterating that we still have the same controls. We have just approved for you guys to go out and get a bond. We still get to make all of these
Correct.
choices. Nothing
Correct.
changes. Maybe somebody will volunteer to freely build us a new high school.
Wow.
Right. No.
Right.
But all those things.
Please send us their name.
I just want to remind everybody, nothing changes. We've just given you guys the.
You just started the process.
Correct.
We've started the process to
Correct.
actually look at getting those RFQs and putting those things into place.
So who's managing currently?
Until now, we didn't have permission to move forward. So now we will come back to you, and that's why we're having HPM present to you some of the things that are needed so that you have an idea, and we will be coming back with that information.
Okay, so you will be managing the timeline.
We will be managing the timeline.
The district.
Yep. And also with your input as well as we go through that process, because again, there are certain things we cannot move forward with without your approval.
Correct.
Does that help?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
And if it's any consolation, I had the same question as Jeff. I just answered it in my head. You're good. Don't feel bad.
Okay, so we're going to move on to, and again, probably more to a higher level FYI about bond planning and actual bond planning activities that happen during bond planning, because you're going to witness those. As board members, you're going to be asked questions about it, even though they sit somewhat outside your control, because they will typically be led by a political action committee, a citizens group that helps educate the community about a bond program and or political candidates. You know what a PAC is. So we'll go on to the next slide here. And this is something you've seen. This is something I covered in the last meeting I was with you, just kind of the overall process. And so I'm not going to cover it again, but it really does, get a political action committee together, establish a committee, you got fundraising, you got to create a message, and you got to educate about the message. Okay, so I'm going to break that into a little more detail this time, because now the clock's ticking. So now we've got to get moving on getting this educated. So we'll go on to the next one. So, and again, it kind of got a little wonky for some reason here, but the first thing in establishing a community bond committee is that, first of all, we don't make it complicated. It's a simple structure. It's a democratic structure that should have a committee chair and should have a committee treasurer. Okay, that's kind of the leadership of that. But in that, you should have subcommittees. And those subcommittees help monitor what's going on from the chair perspective. And so, first, obviously, a publicity and public relations committee. We believe this needs to be led by a public relations firm. And we believe that public relations firm likely needs to be local. It needs to be a local person that knows your community, that knows bond campaigns, that can help you through a process like that. This group also is responsible for designing materials, production of materials. They lead schedule for information events, get the vote out events, voter registration events. So there's a lot of responsibility in that has to occur. There also has to be a research committee. The research committee should ask the district for that transparent information, the information that you guys talked about tonight, to help clarify that, to have a PR firm help clarify what $32 a month above 60 means, to really put it in layman's perspective in the simplest way. And so in that research committee, but it's going to be because, when you're crafting a message, we talked about this in the facility planning. Sometimes the data will drive the message and sometimes the message drives the data, right? Well, in this case, the data has to help shape the message a little bit. It has to say, this is why the district's going out. for a bond. And so there has to be the right information put together in the right way from a community perspective to get that word out. And again, it can be facility master plan data, demographic data, voter data. It can be a whole lot of sets of data that can go out there. A lot of the information that the PAC will use could be internal also in this data, like the voter data. We should do research on voter turnout. We should do research on where voters don't turn out so we can go out and get the vote out. Go get registration events out in the community where people aren't voting. So we should have that information out there too. And there also needs to be a volunteers committee. The volunteers committee is kind of the hands-on, everybody in, getting it organized, making sure there's enough people attending events that are out there, that this thing has personnel behind it. You can go to the next one, please. So then you go back to the fundraising for this. Obviously, there should be a treasury subcommittee also. And I set that aside because I think that treasury subcommittee works with the treasurer of this group to ensure that, first of all, that the dollars or there's a review of what is to be reported back to the local elections office. There is a set way to do that, and one person should never be responsible for that. There should always be a committee to review that, to make sure everything's in line, and to make sure the treasurer's in place for that. And so, but also this is the treasury subcommittee should be looking at how to raise dollars, and not just raising dollars, because dollars can also be in-kind services. The idea that, and we'll talk about those a little bit, but those in-kind services could be things like providing a venue that we can go to meet or to hold something, that because you can't do it at a school, you can't do it at a district office. It could be, hey, I've got a venue that I won't charge you to use. It can be a sign company and saying, hey, I'll print up to this much in yard signs for you. So you can take in-kind contributions also, but that has to be reported. Anything like that has to be reported. Also, and we just make sure it's in print, cannot be solicited by district employees or board members. We're going to keep it in print, and we're going to continue to keep it in print. As Trustee Simpson said, that there's a way that as a citizen, a person can go out and talk as they want. But from this perspective, from a district equipment, from district venue, from district anything, no, the line's drawn. Our likely contributors are going to be alumni and local businesses. And I think that, I think one thing that always gets lost in the message of spending $200 million is the idea that $200 million has an economic impact on your community. And it likely is far more than $200 million. And it keeps people working. It keeps people being able to pay their current taxes or pay their current gas bill or their groceries. And so I think what gets lost in the conversation is that we see it as also oftentimes in our debit sheet, not our credit sheet. And so I think that likely contributors are also people out there who could, like local businesses, local contractors, that want to see something like this go forward so they have jobs for their employees in the future. And so I think that one of the things when Ben was talking about like contractor market analysis, one of the things that we have to be sure of is that we push as much as we can, and even when we're talking about in a planning and a bonding campaign, is that we push for as much local as we can, as much as we can. Yes.
Do you find that a lot of builders will come through to do some, like I assume you run a lot of bonds and so on and so forth, yeah. Do you find that a lot of local builders will do that, especially as we're looking towards that downturn of home development? Do you find that a lot will get involved so that they can bid on those contracts?
I think I think that's their end game to want to bid on a contract and see that.
They're in business to make money.
But I also know that they know that if a bond doesn't pass, they don't have any work.
Right.
So I think it's twofold. I think that they're genuinely, as a small business owner, they're working toward getting funding in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I do think that local businesses will step up.
Yeah. And Dr.
That's
Russell and I had attended a presentation just phenomenal about keeping that type of money local. And I love that you brought that up here.
Yeah.
I love what you just said.
And look, sometimes it's difficult.
Sure. I totally get it. But the heartbeat there, right?
But I think there is when, like I said, in that program development phase, that's when you're identifying as many as you can and doing the market analysis and building relationships. And so making sure that happens in that phase allows that to happen more.
I love that.
Yeah. And so I think that's a really good thing. But I also think that's a message that should be clear in the education, is that there is an intent to keep as much local as possible. And so when you're doing that fundraising piece, and as we're working through that fundraising piece from the PAC side, those are things we need to keep in mind. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, so creating the message. I'm going to repeat, use a local firm to do the public relations on this. The PAC that's who they should contract with. So when a PAC raises money, part of the money has to go to some of those consulting services, like a PR firm. Okay, and so keep it local, familiar with Nampa, and has background in political campaigns. And you actually have someone local that is a Nampa High grad that will be talking to see if they might be interested in contracting something like this. Because I do think that somebody that's here, that is personal, that can really put, look, there's no question that there's a lot of fact base in here, but somebody who has ownership here and lives here has a personal commitment here. And they have an emotional tie to this to make sure that it just goes that much further. So I think that's a really good idea. Again, funded through the PAC. And we're going to make that clear. It's funded through the PAC.
Glad you said that.
Yep. Again, funded through the PAC. I'll try to keep everything above. Again, part of the idea of a PAC should be to carry on the district's message of transparency and openness. Completely agree. None of this is below board. I mean, if people want to see the 85,000 line items of deficiencies, Mark is happy to print those in a book for you all day long. But
I think someone actually asked that
yeah,
question.
so yeah, and that's fine. I mean, line item by line item. And so that information's out there. We have been doing the planning for a while. So again, the idea of the bond planning is to keep that level of transparency to the board expectation. And I think a good PAC does that synonymously with the board. I think they work not together, but in sync in that message. The PR firm will work on with the research and publicity subcommittee very specifically, especially a lot up front, okay, to start getting this done. Once branding the message is established, you get materials and publications. You got to start getting that stuff printed. You have to get it ordered. You have to get all that out. And so, again, we're kind of in that timeline where we're going to head in the Christmas season. And I think what I liked about what Trustee Pearson said was that when you get around the holidays, sometimes people don't check an email, don't check a mail, don't check their mailbox for something that's in there. So we got to be very specific about when we send things out to make sure it's very clear to everybody. And so there's no question when they come back. And so being strategic about when mailings go out from the PAC is going to be a part of this. And so, no, we're not going to send something out on December 20th. That just doesn't make any sense. Nobody will see it because nobody wants to open that one, under the tree. We'll wait till the first of the year, 2 months before, and then we'll strategically do that. Do the same with voter registration events. Like, we want to make sure that it's in a time when people know that a voter registration is happening. And it's at a big event where people are going to attend. And so once all that's established, you've got to get that stuff rolling pretty quickly. Not you, but we've got to get that stuff rolling pretty quickly. We go there. Educating. Remember, we've talked ad nauseum that the needs of the condition are what this is about. And I could completely, with all due respect, disagree. I couldn't disagree more with you on this one. I think this is about student outcomes. I think that because of enhanced career and technical opportunities, because of enhanced athletic, fine arts, educational adequacy, safety and security, this is about student outcomes.
How are you disagreeing with us on
Because I don't think it's about condition. I don't think and I didn't mean in that way. I meant that it is, to me, it's not about condition. The condition will take care of itself regardless. If you don't pay for anything, guess what the condition will do? Well, I don't have to say it. So here is the message. The message is that good facilities maintenance across the board is always going to be good for student outcomes. And that's the truth. When kids feel safe, when they're in the right learning environments, when they have the right learning tools, when they have the right teachers to come in the buildings because the environments the teachers in are environments teachers want to be in. Those all go to student outcomes. That's the message here. And so whatever that's worth, to me, whatever that's worth to your community, not to my community. Tracy Richter lives in Hilliard, Ohio. I've got my standards, what I think my board should be going for. But I think that's the message here. And in that, we talk about the condition. We talk about the cost. We talk about what it means to do it when you need to do it. And that's going to be a difficult message. Because I think that as you go across this, I will tell you, I'm not sure that in 25 years of doing planning, I've ever won or lost a bond because of the dollar amount. I've always thought it was about what it was for and what the value was. And you see, whatever the value is here is in student outcome.
quick interruption here. I just want to make sure that that's exactly where this board is coming.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in
Mhm.
various meetings, and
Yep.
that is the focus is on student outcome.
Yep.
So I don't want there to be any.
No, and I didn't mean it like that, and I apologize in that
It's all
statement.
about
So I do.
facilities. It's not
So
about facilities. It's not about a shiny new high school.
Yep,
It's
nope,
about
it
what
is
the
not.
high school can provide for the students.
That's
and how-
exactly right.
I think
And we
this-
agree with that.
This board is all in agreement.
And that's where the PAC's going to hold the message. They're in complete alignment with you on that because they have to be. But I will tell you that sometimes it's going to get in the weeds about those other things. But what impacts student outcomes? Everything I just told you impacts student outcomes. Okay? And so it depends, again, on your community value. And again, you're going to let your community vote on that value. And so I think that's where kind of that message goes across right there. But how do you do that? First of all, you have to involve every school. Now, there's a fine line. What does it mean involving every school? That means our PAC chair should be calling athletic boosters, band boosters, PTA, PTO leaders of every building to say, hey, do you want to be a part of volunteering for this? Because every school needs to have a voice in this in some way, shape, or school, call it a community, whatever you will on that. I think also local government relations, and you guys have just talked about this tonight, your local government relations and your Chamber of Commerce relations are very important. Understanding that they've got needs too, and we don't step on the needs of them also. But we work side by side to make sure that all needs are met. Print media. I think there is a minimum of 2 citywide mailings. And again, citywide mailings, not just school district mailings, but citywide mailings to make sure everybody's informed as much as we can. I say minimum 2 just because the timeline gets a little crunched in there. It's hard to get that out. Also doing op-eds, flyers, yard signs, the whole, you've seen the political campaigns. All that has to go into there. Social media, just expanded audience in social media and how we do it. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
So is all of this to commercial for the bond? That's what we're trying to do, encourage the bond?
For the PAC. For the PAC. The PAC is out there to educate on the bond and to know that there's a bond out there. That's, yes, it's an education of that. And again, here's what we can't do. And this is what I will continue to tell you all the time. Is what I can't do is I can't control a PAC member that's sitting down at dinner or at a restaurant with friends and family and say, you should. I can't control that. What the PAC can control is the message that is out there publicly in front of people. And that's to educate, to say what the bond's about, and to make sure that people know what those are, what the bond is about and what it's intended to do. I think that's an excellent question. I'm glad we'll continue to clarify that too, because I think that's important to know. And again, I just can't control people when they leave that platform a little bit, if you understand what I mean. So, and then of course you got television, media, interviews, school spotlights, commercial ads, those kind of things that go into this. And again, even in social media, I will tell you that there's an example, a local school district from where I'm from. They use their social media, they use their LinkedIn profile, and their CFO was doing like these humorous skits on like what school finance means, because like seriously, nobody understands it. So what he was trying to do was he was trying to put in a simple setting on social media education. So he would come out and he'd be talking to people about, oh, let me tell you about how much a bond costs people. And then the room would scatter because nobody would understand, right? But then he'd go into an education platform on social media because you can do that. I think that you can use these platforms to educate. And that's what we intend to do in the PAC also. Also, again, we're going to go voter registration events. We want to make sure as many people can vote that can vote. Okay, getting out there to make sure that happens. And then, of course, door-to-door education. I know that sounds archaic, but I know this is also a community that is very neighborhood-oriented, that knows their neighbors and will talk to their neighbors. And I do think door-to-door matters. And so, but I also think that needs to be organized in some way, shape, or form to make sure that if we're going to go door-to-door, we want every door. So how do you identify neighborhoods? How do you identify when you can go, the volunteers to get there and do those kinds of things? So I think you can see there's a lot in that educating. Go ahead. Again, from today on, this is kind of a schedule and timeline of what it looks like, and it comes in a hurry. I was able to make mine a lot bigger because that timeline is really crunched and the events that have to happen. What I can't tell you is when everything's going to happen yet, because we've got to get that established. But you can see that getting all this stuff engaged right now, by middle of December, making sure that the PAC meetings have started and that messaging is already being crafted. And so the good news is that you've put 5 hard years of work into getting the research done already. You're not starting from scratch when it comes to research. So research is simply handing over stuff. So that's really good. The also benefit that you have is you just had a midterm that has recent voter data. That's a huge advantage, because then you can see what the voter turnout was like, where the voters are, where they're not coming from, where we need to have education. And I think that's a big thing. Like, if you were a year out from a past election, it's kind of hard to predict, but you just had this. And so I think you've got some information that is going to be helpful for you. So with that's a timeline. Again, there's always adjustments in timeline, but the next one then shows, in the meantime, what can be done. Now, from the Board of Trustees, establishing policy and procedure for a bond oversight community committee. And so I know you already have policy around committees and how to select committees, but there should be procedure on having a community citizens group that is a bond oversight committee, and to establish bylaws for that bond oversight committee. Again, it provides transparency, and it also provides an opportunity for feedback to the board from a community perspective. And I think that's important. So again, we can help with that. Again, this isn't an overburden on the board, because I've got, 100 examples of really good bond oversight committee bylaws and good procedures that you can look at to follow. Establish a communications plan for the entire capital program. How are you going to communicate it? When are you going to communicate it? How often are you going to communicate it? Who's going to communicate it? Those are all important and to be thinking about before you pass a bond, because I know that there's already questions from community members that are asking these questions. How are you going to let us know about this? How are you going to be transparent? How often are you going to be transparent? Well, let's let them know. Let's get working on a communications plan even before a bond ever passes. Yeah.
And I just want to add to that, communication in Spanish is crucial in our community. And I hope that's part of the process that you guys are looking at.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Trustee Valley. I think that's really important. Making sure that we can communicate to all groups is really, really important. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked, and we won't. We need to make sure that happens. Also, during this, I think that the district should compile a complete elections record by organizing all the election material that you see out there. And it also falls in the next one, be ready to compose an election summary. Here's the thing, is that it's been a long time since you asked the voters for a bond, for a facilities bond, to a point where nobody here was on the board, no administrator. Maybe Dr. Russell, were you in the district when we did that?
I was in the yes, I was in the district, but was not administrator. I was teaching.
Okay, so to the point is that, and it's hard to find the data from that last election, or the process, or materials that you use that work, or voter areas that worked, or it's very difficult to find that stuff. You know why? Because it wasn't done. And so I think it becomes incumbent upon the Board of Trustees and the district, to really start to create files of compiling election materials, processes, what worked, what didn't work, because the board is never going to stop asking at some point. There's always going to be an ask out there in the future. You just don't know when the next ask is going to be. And so I think it would be beneficial to the next board, and the next board, and the next board, to look back to say what worked, what didn't work. How can we make this better? How can we make it more transparent? How can we do this? And so if we do these last two things while we're thinking about this, we're better prepared. And if the bond doesn't pass, in that, you're still better prepared for the next ask if you decide when you want to ask again. And so I think that in the meantime, while all this is going on the PAC side and the community committee out there that's working on this education process, I think that there's work to be done internally yet. And again, not overwhelming, because there's plenty of precedents for this. And so we just adopt really good processes to get this done. And look, you look prepared. This will help the community say that, look, what Ben just presented and what I presented here and just this slide alone is probably more than like 80% do out there. And I think that even in districts that haven't gone after a lot of bond programs in the past, it's an education process, and the learning curve is this for everybody. And so we want to make sure that the community sees that we're prepared for this, that we are prepared, regardless of what your answer is. We're prepared. And that's what this will do. So just as the last couple slides, and I'm not even going to go in detail on these, but again, your reminders, your Idaho codes, they're right there. You saw them the last time. I'm not going to go through them again. But we put the Idaho code up there because we know, what the lines to be drawn are. Okay. That last one. District may not use any school resources, time, property, including employee work and time, to advocate for one particular side or a bond levy or another. Can't do it. Salaried employee administrators be viewed as represented district at all time. Therefore, they should never engage in campaigns, should limit all communication regarding the bond or levy to information only.
Clarification,
yes.
Does that mean teachers? Because teachers are salaried.
So this is it. So again, this is to information only. So it does apply to a salaried position. And so again, I think one of the important pieces that something that the administration can do is that they can provide their schools with information packets, just like you're going to post online, the facts, all that. You can provide those because it's just factual data. This is how much it'll cost you. This is what it's going to do.
That's smart.
Yeah, I mean, and so again, the more the word gets out to inform, the better. And so, and you stay within those parameters, and those parameters are exactly that. And again, like you said, they can walk down the street and talk to their neighbor, and they can say yay or nay as much as they want and as loud as they want. But we know what the rules are, and we're going to abide by the rules. And that way, we have trust in this process. And I think the trust is going to be a big deal. I think you've alluded to it. You're building trust as a new board, as a new administration, and you just keep building trust and keep building trust and keep building trust. And if you mess up, then you own it. And then if you don't mess up, you own that too. Correct. So yeah. So I think that's what this process will help do in that. So with that, I know you were asking questions as we go along, but I just wanted to show you this so you know what's going on as we go.
Isn't this very similar to the presentation you gave at Nampa High?
Pretty
okay,
close.
Good. I was like, I feel like I saw this. So
pretty close.
Make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just thinking about the changes since 2007 when the last one was approved to this city. I mean, just the increase in population, the demographics. I mean, it's incredible. It's a whole different city. I'm going to ask what could probably be construed as a dumb question. I'm going to ask her. So the PAC, moving forward from this point, you had mentioned that you had somebody in mind, or you had talked to somebody in the community. Did I miss?
No, we have. I mean, we've already talked to people who want to help lead this PAC, and kind of behind the scenes trying to figure out who can help be somebody to consult with.
So, are you going to continue down that road, or is that something that we need to decide as a board?
Nope.
Or that's part of the PAC?
That's the PAC. So the PAC will contract. As part of the funding, like I said, for the PAC will be to pay for consultants to help with the work, and that's a PAC responsibility to be able to hire them.
Organized and set. Is that something that you're?
Well, yeah. And again, through the PAC.
Right.
Yeah. We'll just keep saying. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep.
It's so critical.
So you mentioned the community committee, and you're not from here. So how do you get that committee developed?
So a lot of that will rely on the PAC chair, and also just rely on kind of my expertise. You know, I've consulted across the country, and so I'm not a local to anybody. And so, but it'll rely on that. Communications have gotten so much better, thank goodness. But part of that will be, again, trips here for me for the PAC to help. And like if they need to see the organized data together, all the GIS analysts come and map stuff for them. So we'll continue to help that.
And are we kept abreast of what's going on with the community?
You'll see everything will be transparent, and I think so. And I think here's the thing is that and just to be clear, the PAC doesn't have a responsibility. Their responsibility is to stay true to your data. But I think that in full transparency to say that, this is what the PAC is doing right now, and you can see what the PAC is doing to be informed. I think that is a great bridge of communication for you.
you.
Yes.
Just for transparency, do we currently have any type of contract with your company, with you?
No,
Those are leading questions.
you do not. But I'm glad to be here. You know I am. So this is I've been here a while with you all, and this would be great to see in any way. Whether again, you have a facilities plan in place that is so good.
And I think the information you've provided in the few times that we've met has been incredible. So we really appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you saying that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
so much for the information. Dr. Ross, I'm gonna ask if there's anything else that you or your staff would like to present.
Chair, Trustees, nothing else to present. The things that you asked us for, we'll get working on immediately, and I will update the board about the FAQs and the calculation tools, and just get all that out, and then we'll have some more information about the district information that we'll be able to do as well in our next board meeting.
Okay. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned at 7:11.